bunker did not feel like safety. It felt like a pause. That was the first thing Kenny noticed when the heavy black door sealed behind him and Pines. No matter how reinforced the walls were, no matter how clean the air tasted compared to the blood-wet hallway above, Astrovault still hummed through the floor like a sleeping beast. The city did not stop. Not for rest. Not for mourning. Not for the 15 bodies being dragged out of District 17 before sunrise. On the bunker wall, a private screen continued replaying the hallway ambush in silence. Kenny stood before the weapon bench, bare-armed, calm, sharpening one of his daggers with slow strokes while the footage behind him played again and again. Pines had watched the first few replays, then the slow versions, then the slowed-to-a-crawl versions. Then he stopped watching. "Mate," Pines muttered from the medical chair, where a machine was sealing the cut across his shoulder with blue surgical light. "I'm telling you now, if that's what level 2 looks like for you, I'm staying friendly. Permanently. I'll write it down if needed." Kenny dragged the whetstone along the dagger edge. "You already said you were staying." "Yeah, well, now I'm saying it with updated information." The machine chirped. Pines winced. "Bloody thing bites. It's healing you. So does alcohol if you're committed enough." Kenny said nothing. Pines looked at him for a moment, then leaned back. The bunker had 2 sleeping pods, a small table, a sealed food dispenser, a private hygiene unit, a medical station, and a reinforced weapon bench. Compared to the rot and noise of District 17 above, it was luxury. Compared to Rain Planets, it was barely a storage room. But it had one important feature: no easy way in. That mattered more than comfort. For 11 hours, Kenny and Pines stayed inside, not hiding, preparing. Pines showered first, cursing when the water pressure changed from warm to freezing without warning. Kenny showered after him, silent beneath the steam, watching blood unwind from his skin and vanish through the drain. They ate from the sponsor dispenser. Protein slabs, mineral broth, electrolyte capsules, and something labeled as premium grain loaf that Pines insisted tasted like wet cardboard with political ambition. Kenny ate without complaint. Pines complained enough for both of them. After eating, they slept in shifts. Pines crashed first, one arm hanging off the sleeping pod, mouth slightly open, still wearing half his armor because he refused to trust a room gifted by a company called Obsidian Mercy. Kenny slept second, only 3 hours, enough. When he woke, Pines was exercising in the small open space near the weapon bench, doing push-ups with one hand while scrolling through public reactions on his wrist projection. "You've got fan clubs already," Pines said. Kenny sat up. "No." "Yes. No. There's one called Dagger Daddy of District 17. Kenny stared at him. Pines lowered from a push-up, grinning. "I didn't make it." Kenny stood and walked past him toward the bench. "I'm deleting the city. That's a big reaction to branding." Kenny began checking his daggers again. Every screw, every edge, every balance point. The twin blades were not traditional rain weapons. They were matte black with faint silver lines along the spine and grips shaped for fast reversals. No decorative gold, no family crest, no ceremonial weight. They were tools, nothing more. That was why Kenny preferred them. Pines sharpened his own blade beside him, then checked the chain he had taken from the ambush. He had cleaned it and wrapped it around his belt like he had owned it for years. "You keeping that?" Kenny asked. "Absolutely. Spoils of war. It almost took your head off." "Exactly. We have history now." The bunker screen suddenly flashed gold. Both men looked up. A calm female voice filled the room. "Attention contestants, first official challenge begins in 10 minutes. All selected contestants must report to Arena District 1. Failure to attend will result in execution by Arena Authority." Pines slowly looked at Kenny. "Well, breakfast and death, classic Eclipse hospitality." The screen changed. Selected contestants, 100. Challenge type, 100 ladder, public spectator mode, active, cheating monitoring, open view. Kenny read the list. His name appeared. So did another unfamiliar name near the lower middle. Lyra Voss. Pines looked through the list twice. "My name isn't there." "No." "That's good." Kenny glanced at him. Pines shrugged. "What? I'm loyal, not disappointed I don't have to immediately die before lunch." Kenny locked his daggers into place. Pines stood. but I'm still coming to watch." The elevator returned them to District 17. By then the corridor had been cleaned, but not well enough. Blood still stained the seams of the floor panels. Contestants stared as Kenny stepped out. Some conversations stopped instantly. Others lowered into whispers. The ranking board had changed during the night, but not enough to remove him from the top. Contestants remaining, 374,400. Kill leader, Kenny Rain, 12 kills. The number followed him across Astrovault like a second shadow. When Kenny and Pines entered the transport route toward Arena District 1, people moved out of their way. Not dramatically at first. One person stepped aside, then another, then a whole group. By the time they reached the main plaza outside the arena, the crowd of contestants had begun parting before Kenny without anyone telling them to. Fear did some of it. Respect did the rest. The arena itself was enormous. A circular battlefield complex surrounded by towering spectator rings, drone bays, and holographic projectors. Only selected contestants stood on the arena floor. The rest filled designated viewing platforms above, where they were required to watch and report visible cheating. That rule sounded noble. It was not. It meant contestants could study one another before facing them later. Pines leaned on the railing above the arena floor and gave Kenny a two-finger salute. "Try not to make me look useless by comparison." Kenny looked up. Too late. Pines grinned. "See? He jokes. My work here is sacred." Kenny moved into the contestant line below. That was when the girl approached him. She had silver blonde hair tied into a messy knot, sharp green eyes, and armor that looked scavenged, modified, then modified again after someone complained it had too few hidden knives. She was shorter than Kenny, but carried herself like height was a boring suggestion. She stepped beside him with a polite little smile. "Kenny Rain." Kenny looked at her. She held up both hands. "Relax, I'm not here to stab you before introductions. That feels rude." He said nothing. She continued anyway. "I'm Lyra Voss." Kenny gave the smallest nod. Lyra looked him over, then glanced at his daggers. So the legends were wrong. Kenny's eyes shifted slightly. "Which ones?" "That Rain fighters only knew how to stand very straight and hit people with family heirlooms." Pines snorted from the spectator rail above. Lyra looked up. "Friend of yours?" "For now," Kenny said. Pines called down. "Best friend, actually. He's emotionally constipated, but we're working through it." Lyra smiled. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," Pines said. Kenny looked forward again. Lyra followed his gaze. "I heard stories about your family growing up," she said, quieter now. "Everyone does. Sword saints, planet kings, war ghosts. Depends who's telling it." Kenny said nothing. "And then you walked in with daggers." "Yes." That was funny. Kenny finally looked at her properly. Lyra shrugged. Not funny like a joke. Funny like watching a statue spit at a cathedral. For a moment, Kenny almost seemed to consider that. Then the arena sky turned black. An artificial eclipse formed above the battlefield, blotting out the projected sun. Gold light burned around the edges of the false moon. The announcer's voice rolled across the arena. "Welcome, contestants and viewers across the galaxy, to the first official challenge of the 10th Eclipse Games." The 100 selected contestants stood in silence. The 100 ladder will test adaptability, cooperation, and survival under changing squad conditions. A holographic diagram appeared overhead. Round 1, 50 one-on-one duels, 50 survivors advance. The diagram shifted. Round 2, 48 contestants will be assigned into 12 2-on-2 matches. 2 highest-ranked survivors from Round 1 will receive seeding protection and advance automatically. 26 contestants will remain. Another shift. Round 3, 24 contestants will be assigned into 4 3-on-3 matches. 2 highest-ranked seeded contestants will advance automatically. 14 contestants will remain. The final diagram appeared. Final round, 7-on-7 squad combat. The surviving squad will be declared challenge winners. Rewards will be divided equally among final surviving squad members. Pines raised his eyebrows from the stands. "Math checks out," he muttered. "Horrible, but it checks out." The announcer continued. "All fights are lethal. Outside interference will result in execution. Spectators are required to report cheating from public view. Betting windows are now open." Kenny looked across the field. Contestants were already staring at him. some hoping they would not draw his name, some hoping they would. Lyra rolled her neck. "Well," she said, "good luck, quiet dagger prince." Kenny looked at her. "Don't die." She blinked, then grinned. "Sweet, practically a love poem from you." The first round began brutally. 50 duels sparked across divided arena cells, each separated by transparent force walls. The crowd could see every kill at once. Kenny's first opponent was a broad-shouldered man with a thermal axe and too much confidence. The duel lasted 6 seconds. The replay lasted longer. Kenny slipped inside the axe swing, cut the man's wrist, stepped behind him, and opened the side of his throat before the axe hit the ground. 13 kills. Lyra won her duel with far more noise. Her opponent used a spear. She used a collapsible hook blade, a knee to the teeth, and a cheerful amount of disrespect. When round 1 ended, 50 remained. The board confirmed it. Challenge participants remaining 50, 100. Total game contestants remaining 324, 400. Round 2 assigned pairs. Kenny was not seated out despite having the highest overall kill count. The crowd noticed. Pines noticed harder. "Oh, that's dodgy," he said from the stands. "That's very bloody dodgy." Lyra was paired with Kenny. She looked at the assignment, then at him. "Well, I feel safer and more concerned at the same time." Their opponents were 2 heavy-armored brothers from the Mars Belt colonies. The match lasted longer than Kenny's duel, not because the brothers were better, because they worked together. One used a tower shield, the other used a chain flail. Lyra harassed the shield bearer, darting around him, forcing him to turn. Kenny waited for the exact moment the chain flail crossed the shield line. Then he moved. He cut the flail chain mid-swing, kicked the loose weight into the shield bearer's knee, and drove one dagger into the chain fighter's lung. Lyra laughed mid-fight. "Oh, I like that." She vaulted onto the shield, kicked the bearer's helmet backward, and stabbed downward through the exposed neck seam. Round 2 ended with 26 contestants remaining. Round 3 seated Kenny and Lyra forward automatically due to combined performance rating. Pines clapped once. Finally, the rigged murder circus remembers numbers. Kenny and Lyra stood aside while 4 3-on-3 fights tore the arena apart. By the time the round ended, 14 contestants remained. The final squads were formed, 7 against 7. Kenny and Lyra stood on the same side. Their 5 teammates looked terrified and relieved at the same time. Across from them stood a squad built like a nightmare. 2 gunners, a sword user, a chemical sprayer, a woman with drone claws, a shield brute, and Helix Moore, the current second-ranked killer in the games. Helix smiled at Kenny. "Rain." Kenny drew both daggers. Helix's smile faded slightly. The horn sounded. The final fight erupted. Gunfire lit the arena first. Kenny moved through it like he had memorized the bullets before they were fired. Lyra stayed close, cutting down a drone claw before it could flank their left side. Their teammates died quickly, 2 in the opening exchange, then a third under chemical fire. Kenny did not waste movement saving people already dead. That made the crowd uneasy. It made Lyra understand him faster. "Left," she shouted. Kenny ducked before the word finished. A blade passed over his head. Lyra drove her hook blade into the attacker's thigh and pulled him off balance. Kenny finished him without looking at her. The fight collapsed into chaos. 7 became 5. 5 became 3. On Kenny's side, only he, Lyra, and 1 wounded spear fighter remained. Across from them, Helix and 2 others still stood. Then the wounded spear fighter took a round through the skull, 2 against 3. Lyra breathed hard. "Still good?" Kenny looked at Helix. "Yes." They moved together. Not like lifelong partners. Not yet. But like 2 predators who understood the same opening. Lyra took the shield brute low, hooking his ankle and dragging him sideways. Kenny used the falling brute as cover, crossed beneath Helix's sword, and killed the gunner behind him. Lyra finished the brute with a blade through the ear. Then it was Kenny and Lyra against Helix. Helix lasted 21 seconds, long enough for the crowd to believe he had a chance, not long enough for history to remember him kindly. Kenny broke his sword stance first. Lyra cut his calf second. Kenny ended him third. The arena went silent. Then the system announced, "Final squad victory confirmed. Survivors, Kenny Rain, Lyra Voss, reward division, equal." Lyra stood there covered in blood, staring at Kenny like she had just watched a locked door become a person. Then she nodded toward the exit. So, she said, you and the funny one got room for a third? Kenny cleaned one dagger. Pines leaned over the rail above them. She means me. I'm the funny one. Lyra looked up. I assumed. Kenny looked from Pines to Lyra, then gave one small nod. For now. Lyra smiled. Good. I like temporary arrangements with terrifying people. Above them, the Eclipse burned gold around the black sky, and across Astrovault, the rankings changed again. The crowd